And we could actually make it interactive. If you have any questions, we don't really need to wait for the end. Like if you got something that you want to fire away, I think all our panel members would be okay with that. If you got an objection, if you fiercely disagree with someone, please do that as well. It doesn't really happen these days, does it? And I guess I would like to ask all of our panel members here, what disciplines, if any, do you associate yourselves with? That would be useful for our participants to know. Johanne?
With me, I guess. So hello, everyone. I'm Johanne Trippas, and as I already said, I'm a senior lecturer in School of Computing Technologies here at RMIT. My background is in social sciences, and so I did my undergrad in Belgium in social sciences. I came to Melbourne, did more social sciences, and then decided that I was lacking the link to the contemporary world. So I thought, well, why not study computer science? Switch from one to the other. So I was studying at Melbourne University at the time, and it was from I feel, I think, and therefore I am, to the next class here at RMIT, and X equals Y is Z. So there was a real shock to the system. But it's taught me a lot of lessons on how to be flexible and how to expand what you think of. And then my master's became a PhD, and now I'm here.
Moving from words to numbers, Milaiki and Hiruni.
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Hiruni Kegalle. I'm working as a postdoc at University of Melbourne. My PhD is in computer science. I got PhD from RMIT, and my bachelor's was also computer science. So I'm a computer science person. But when I started my PhD, I wanted to do something with HCI. Human-computer interaction, and I got my scholarship from ADMS, Automated Decision Making and Society, and RMIT. So my work was, even though the PhD is in computer science, my work was sitting in between social sciences and computer sciences. So I used a range of methodologies from data analysis, spatiotemporal analysis, to more qualitative methods like interwaves, focus groups, design workshops. So my trajectory was a combination of social sciences and computer sciences from the PhD. And the postdoc that I'm got is led by social sciences, but I'm working in the technical team. So yeah, that's how interdisciplinary work got into me.
That's fantastic, yeah. And Oli?
Thanks, Bogdan. Morning. Nice to meet all of you who I don't know. I never considered myself a quantitative or a computational researcher until I think one day I made the mistake in the office of saying that I knew more about Excel than the person that I was working for. And that's a very slippery slope when you admit that. Before you know it, and pivot tables lead to Python scripts, lead to geospatial analysis. So I suppose one thing led to another. And I am more quantitative and computational now than I think I was when I was at the Digital Media Research Centre, where I did my doctorate. I spent the last 3 years in a non-academic role. I was working for the public service, managing the media reform policy strategy, and also a bunch of research to support that strategy, which again was, I think, a lot more computational and quantitative than necessarily I've been trained in, but it's what I did. So I've been back in academia for 3 weeks, and this is a wonderful way to reconnect. So thanks for having me.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And then Oleg?
For me, I started with an undergrad engineering degree, and I guess I was so I didn't really know what I wanted, so I chose this kind of mixed degree. It was industrial engineering and project management. So I also had a lot of courses in psychology, marketing, and not so much engineering stuff. And I have to admit that during my degree, I actually found them not as attractive and interesting for myself. So then I focused on computer science, did my master's, and then my PhD, focused especially on information retrieval. And I guess during my PhD, it was when I kind of found how actually useful and important those courses during my bachelor's degree were in psychology and other stuff, because in information retrieval we always think about users, but we tend to model them in a very oversimplified way. And that kind of got me thinking more about the user side of it. I'm not gonna tell you that I now work more on like social sciences or anything like that. It's still computer science, but I do find it much more interesting today, all the user aspects of it. And now I'm doing my postdoc at the ADMS together with Katerina, and I find it really, really interesting to see how people from non-computer science think about those things.
I guess the next logical question would be, was it a positive experience for you? Like switching from, all the, for example, for Oleg, that would be switching from all this technical work to adopting new perspective and thinking about the people who actually interact with those systems that you develop and that you work with. And do you think it somehow enriched your research? Do you think it positively contributed to your work? Has it improved in any way?
So I think I'll start from the end, and I'll say definitely yes. I find the research to be much more interesting, and I don't think only for myself. I think that it's something that you can also tell other people about. So when I talk to my friends, if it was papers that I did that had nothing to do with, let's say, users, it's quite difficult to explain what you actually did in this work to make it interesting for them, because it's just such a minor technical detail that it's pretty much impossible. So I find it much more interesting for myself and for everyone else as well. And I guess it just opens a new horizon of options and opportunities. That's kind of the main thing that I see about it. You can still do the computer science stuff, but now you have many more new angles to look at it.
It certainly can improve your work. That's a very useful thing about computational social science. I believe that once you start working with different methods, it kind of enriches your research and possibly pushes you towards better publications. What about you, Oli?
Do you mind if I go negative?
Shifting from social science to numbers and computers and whatever.
Because I think, well, look, I think for me, some of the most useful advice and experiences that I've had have been from cases where the meshing of different perspectives has had challenges. And, if I can share some of that, perhaps you won't have the same challenges, or maybe you will, but you'll be better prepared to deal with them. And for me, I think particularly in government kind of roles and industry roles too, I think people do have what we might understand as kind of quasi-disciplines, ways of thinking that are dominant or predominant, but they're just not as formalized as they are for us in saying, I'm a social scientist. So, public servants have a particular way of thinking about the policy process that they're also trained in. My very first day in the APS, one of my senior bosses came over to me and she said, where did you get your degree? And I said, QUT. And she went, QUT, they just did a piece of research for us. It was absolutely terrible. And I was sitting there because I'd worked on that piece of research. My name was on that piece of research. And I didn't tell her that day because I wanted her to like me. But the reason I found out more as I got brave enough to have these conversations over time with these execs about why they thought this research project, which I had worked on with a couple of other people at QT as a consultancy, why they had thought it was bad and why we had thought it was good. And a lot of it just came down to the core kind of research question that we were examining, that we understood in a very academic and social scientist way, was not at all what the public servants had intended when they had written it out. And it comes down to really basic things like the title of that tender had included the word assessment in an assessment of news media business models. And as social scientist academics, we had considered that to require some, really deep thought. So we had put together, almost a PhD thesis worth of deep thought on assessing this thing. But it turns out what they had been looking for was something that was completely different, something that was more just the vein of a comparative table. It says this difference is that, this difference is that. And so being able to be on the same page at that very early stage of what is the question that we are exploring and how do we each understand the different key components of that question. And that's something that you learn straight away as a doctoral student. It's really important to have a good research question. It's really important to understand your key terms. But I think my big experience of this different perspectives coming together has just been reinforcing the importance of that very, very fundamental lesson of, it's actually really important to be on the same page. And I have lots of other fun stories of, just different understandings of words that, you just wouldn't have thought, oh my God, how did you think that means that? That's crazy. But I will save some of that for later.
It's a very, very important note. And I think that totally brings us to the next question. What does interdisciplinary collaboration actually mean? What does it personally mean to you? I mean, I guess what are the main challenges of doing an interdisciplinary project, whether it's a research project or it's work-related, policy-related stuff? Maybe Johanne?
Because there are always hiccups, even if it's not interdisciplinary.
Even when you don't work.
Yes, even if you work by yourself, there are hiccups. But I was thinking about this as well as looking at two different ways how you can work interdisciplinary. One is your colleagues work in a different field and you've come together because you want to answer a particular research question. And that can be challenging, as already said by Ollie, your vocabulary might be different. You have different methods. You might talk about the same method with different words. You have different standards as to what you need to produce. Some people produce journal papers, some people produce workshops. So there are so many different things. And again, to what Ollie was saying, have that research question quite early on, but not just that. Keep refining it along the way so you ensure that you stay on the same path and you're talking about the same thing. So I guess one example, so one way is, yes, you work with people interdisciplinary, but you can also work on your subjects that you may not know anything about. And so I consider that somewhat interdisciplinary too, as in, we all have our niches where we come from. We understand perhaps the people in this particular area, whether we might be interested in cult communities. We know particular features of these cult communities. Now we broaden this out and we want to investigate something similarly, but in a different community. So to me, that as well is some kind of interdisciplinary way of working. So for example, I have worked, as was already alluded to, with physicians on trying to identify cardiac arrests over telephone calls. So in itself, a super, super cool project, really interesting, has Ambulance Victoria involved, has physicians involved, has us as computer scientists involved. My role became in itself interdisciplinary because I was put in between. And I was like, all right, you're now the go-to because you can talk to both. Okay, all right, sure, I can do that. So I spend a lot of time with physicians, listening to audio calls, trying to find out whether people were dying or not. So in itself, that is interdisciplinary. And because we were able to work so closely together, it was never an issue because I was there with them and they were there with me. But that could have gone off track incredibly quickly if we decided not to do as much together. we decided to really embed with each other and roll through all of the stages together. If we would have gone off and not have heard what each other was saying and then would have come back together to merge that would have been a disaster. It was already difficult enough, but I think we had a very, very clear goal what we wanted to do. So everything was about the goal, not about the people. And people brought different qualities to the table. And so I think that's an example of a really successful way of working. And, yes, I think the project was successful. We weren't able to publish anything due to confidentiality, but itself, the project was very successful.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
The decision to be so co-located, was that an active decision that you took early on?
Yeah, good question. I think it kind of was, but then COVID happened. So a lot of our meetings were online. A lot of meetings were sharing. So as I already said, so I work on audio analysis as well. And so basically what we did is I did some pre-processing audio features, and we then just played audio, and I sat together with physicians and we discussed sound bites. Like, how more basic can you get? But that was just a way of identifying, okay, what are we doing? And so that shifted even in one call that we then brought back to the bigger team. So I think that moment of COVID, everything online, was a real benefit at the time. So whether it was a conscious decision or whether it was something that merged into, I'm not sure. Yep.
Interesting.
It's very important. Practical work, right, as well. And that's contribution to a single project. But when it comes to publications, you mentioned publications. When it comes to publications, different fields, they value different areas. So for social scientists, it's journals. The better the journal is, the better your publication is, virtually. And the more you get cited. And when it comes to computer science, it's conferences. The better the conferences, the better your publication is, and the more achievements you can record on your CV. And I guess working, such as, for example, myself, if I work on a publication, I would probably prefer a journal publication over a conference publication, because no one in my world would know what that conference is. I go to EMNLP, for example. People are like, yeah, cool. Have you published a journal article? Yeah. So have you actually had to deal with it? Have you actually ever had to decide which venue you're going to choose? And then how does it usually come about, I guess? How does it usually go? Probably any of you?
I'm happy to jump in, because absolutely, right? That's the joy of working with different people and being curious and being open for different things. Like, yes, I was working with anthropologists. I said, oh, look, I'm actually organizing this conference. It's on conversational user interfaces. This would be a really nice little piece. And they were like, yeah, okay. What does that mean? Like, what do we do? Oh, we just start an overleaf. We dump everything in there, and we're just going to develop it further. We've done the research with the pilots. It's awesome. Again, we were working with a different kind of user group. Okay, overleaf. Where do I get that? So Overleaf is an online editor that we use a lot in computer science. And all right, they were curious. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll set everything up. Nice. Yeah. They were kind of excited to do computing stuff. I'm going to write code, kind of, right? And we put together the paper. The paper was accepted. I was able to lead that process. which was really exciting because they were excited about learning how things work. Again, what I thought was really interesting, they were very successful anthropologists, but they write books. I don't write books. I don't have time to write books. And they were incredibly excited that their paper or our paper got cited in the next month, because books don't get cited. And so they were like, okay, all right, I've got a citation for this already. And I'm like, yeah, right? Like, yeah. So there are all of these subtle differences that are there. And I think that that's what the beauty is about understanding, okay, which venue do we go for? What is suitable for what kind of venue? At that point in time, that was just the preliminary work. Then that went into more of a journal work that they took more care of. So it's like working together and seeing, okay, where do we have the qualities? Where do we have the time? What time pressure do we have? When do we need deliverables? Because sometimes a project, you need to show that you've done something. Therefore, a workshop paper to a conference might be very valuable. It might not be valuable in the sense of, oh, this is going to get 100 citations, but it might just be valuable to show, look, we are working together and we can work together and we're progressing. So, yeah, to the question of journals, workshops, conferences, it is different. It is absolutely different, and I'm learning every time again about different things. Like we have journals that work as conferences but get published as a journal. I still don't get my head around it. So, I ask Hiruni, okay, which one are you publishing in? What is a good venue for this particular thing? Oleg and I work in a very similar space. We kind of know what the value is of particular things, but he still publishes at different places than I do. So it's more about, okay, can we learn from each other? And we ask each other, look, I've got this piece of work. Where do you think it could go? Where would be a good venue? Where would people accept this kind of work?
That's very insightful. And I guess that brings us to the question of language. And so even if you are two computer scientists, even if you are from two different fields within computer science, you still speak different language. Same with social science. If you're from communications and at the same time you're working with a political scientist, that might be a challenge. So I guess have you ever had to deal with this language issue or translation, the issue of translation, when working with your colleagues? So maybe Hiruni?
I'll give you an example of a challenge that I had to face during my PhD. So my work started with more quantitative work around collecting data, analyzing them, and then I found some results, but I wanted to know why this happened. So I changed the methodology into conducting interviews because I was interested in knowing why. After conducting the interviews, I found some results, and then we had this CS student group that I had to present the results to, and I felt so nervous knowing that I've used thematic analysis. What I've done is interviews, so it's not technical enough to present. Should I tell them why this is important? How should I start it? Will they accept my work as a contribution to computer science? I was so nervous preparing the presentation, even presenting it, but luckily they accepted it. They asked questions, and they wanted me to have a workshop around how to do qualitative analysis. But translating what you did using a different methodology without less of a technical contribution to a computer science discipline only people is a challenge. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then yesterday we had this panel with Seraphine, and then it reminded me, she was talking about models, and then she said open source models, which is something that's accepted in social science, which is something that I've used in my work. And then no one corrected me because no one knows. But if you go to a computer science department and you say, oh, here's my work. I've got this work and I used open source models. You go like, what? Open source models? Which ones are those? Like, open source models. Like, Gemma, sorry, and then GLM and all this stuff. You go like, they're not open source models. Open source models, they're open. You can access their source code. You know what the data they've been trained on. And then I'm thinking, but as the opposite to proprietary models, which are like Gemini, Claude, or whatever. Like, but they're not still this. For example, Gemma, it's not open source. It's open weights. If you need to be precise, or it's open, you can call it an open model. They'll be more acceptable. So there are different gradations. And then when social scientists talk about computer stuff, I think sometimes it might make people laugh. Does it? Or the opposite? Do you have any of these experiences or observations?
I would say that I wouldn't say necessarily laugh, but there are things that get confused all the time. Especially, for example, in my field, it is so often that people think that recommendation system and search are the same. And every time we hear it, something inside you kind of goes like, we have different conferences, we have different journals, it's not the same. It's completely different, but it's okay, you learn to accept it. And sometimes you correct people if you think it's really important. Sometimes you just accept it because it doesn't really matter how they called it. Usually what matters is the bigger question. And I guess those differences, you see them all the time. Sometimes, if we are writing a paper together and you write an open source model in the paper and we're going to submit it to an IR conference, I'll probably change that. But other than that, if it's acceptable, then find it perfectly fine.
Would it be a reject for some venues? Like they open your article and then see the abstract and you say open source models. Okay, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Reject.
Well, I think what's more interesting is like I've been working with obviously physicians, pilots, communication scientists, and there it is. Are we using AI? And I go, what is AI for you, right? What do you think AI is? Oh, this AI thing is collecting all of our data for our meeting. What is this AI thing? It's Copilot that's on, right? So I think this is an awesome example right now as to specifying whether we need to know at that point in time if AI is a particular model or if it's just something that we don't really care about. For example, I'm working with communication scientists around how cult communities use AI, especially elderly people in the cult community. For us, it doesn't matter at this point in time to specify to them what is AI. We want to know from them how they perceive AI. So there is no point for us to specify, AI is actually this. That's not the point. So it depends where you come from, whether you need to specify the language, whether you understand each other, whether it's obviously a deal breaker at that point in time. I think there are so many variables, but I think this is a great example, a very current example.
Great. And I guess have you had any issues with when you communicate to more, say, I call it computer people, like yesterday, Oli or Hiruni?
Maybe something interesting on that is I for the last 3 years I ran the TV media survey, which is a really big survey that the government commissions to try and better understand what Australians are doing with their kind of everyday media use. And with that project, there's a commissioned research partner. It's a competitive tender. The Social Research Centre won that for many, many years. And I think they got into a routine where they would bring along their statisticians who, all have actually really impressive academic backgrounds. They've got, doctorates in like stats stuff, publication records and stats stuff. And SRC would wheel them out whenever there was any sort of questionable data point that was coming out from that survey that we're going, what's this? And so the statisticians be wheeled to the stage and they would go, it's all good, it's all good. Statisticians say it's okay. And there was one that always amused me, which was we asked people about kind of the reasons that they liked to use their actual television set, because the government really cared about how many people were actually using real TVs instead of computers or phones. And it was just over 1% of respondents had said, "Oh, I love using my television because it's so portable and it's easy to move around." And you're sitting there and you go, well, no, no, it's not. TVs are big, you're not packing it up and lugging it around and plugging it in somewhere else. And so that's from the policy perspective, you look at that and you go, oh, that's just people have misclicked. There's some sampling errors maybe. They've hit the wrong buttons. But there was always a reluctance from the highly computational people to even get to the stage of admitting that there could be those sorts of errors just present within the data, and that you wouldn't be going and briefing the minister. Minister, 1% of Australians like their televisions because they are portable and they carry them around. So we need policies to help people carry their television. You wouldn't do that because you would apply kind of a common sense layer to it. But being able to have that conversation between, and even I think growing enough in confidence from your own position to be able to sometimes push back against some of the other highly respected, highly qualified perspectives that you'll get. Sometimes you need to do that as well.
Well, that's perfect ending of your response, because I was going to ask you about whether you actually had disagreements or conflicts based on that. Because, well, it's very easy. I believe I believe in disagreement. But these days, it feels like everyone agrees with each other. And then whenever there's good work produced, everyone just claps. Yay, that is wonderful. That's fantastic work. And no one actually says anything bad about other people's work. And I think science is about discussing things. And then there's not much point in agreeing. If we all agree on something, why would we even talk about it? That's something that we accept, right? But what is something that we disagree with? And I guess that's common within one field. It can happen within one field, but I would imagine that some bigger conflicts might arise when you talk to someone from a different field, because not only you disagree on a subject, but also you disagree methodologically or maybe theoretically. Has any of you had to deal with conflicts, or has any of you maybe changed something that they thought about a subject because of they actually worked with someone else with a different perspective, and then it changed your research?
I want to disagree.
But people usually agree.
No, that's the thing. I don't know. Please jump in. But I find in my research field, we disagree. Yeah, we disagree, and it's a skill to try to explain what you disagree on. Try to understand where the other person comes from. Why a particular method was a good method for that particular thing. You may completely disagree. We have even these well, I can't pronounce the word, the feuds, where people write letters to journals to say I disagree, right? So that we agree all the time, I disagree. Yeah.
See, that's very productive, right? We have a point that we both disagree on. It's a clear point. What about you guys? Have you ever had to?
Again, from my PhD experience, this is not about disagreement. It's about finding the correct method, or finding how to do that correctly. So as a computer science student from my bachelor's, I wasn't taught enough on the ways qualitative methods, I'd say. So how to do interviews, how to do focus groups wasn't taught in precise way. So I had to learn that myself. And ADMs helped me a lot because it opened doors for interdisciplinary work, and it opened doors to introduce ourselves to more social science professors, so I could go and talk to them. Then when I first wanted to do interviews, I was thinking, how many interviews should I do? So for computer scientists, we want so many data points, right? So should I do like 100 interviews? And then I talked to a postdoc from social sciences, and she said, no, you can do just 10, 8, that would be enough. It's like, how come? It's just 10 data points. So then I learned how these different methods work. It's not disagreement, it's how they do that, right? I can't just transcript 100 interviews and then do it. I can't finish my PhD. So it's agreeing on their methods, learning their methods, I'd say.
I mean, yeah, it's also a matter of scale, right? If you have like 1 million data points, and then as a social scientist, you'd probably be prone to worrying about, oh, what if that 1%, like someone said, I like outliers. I like outliers. What does that 1% tell us? And that's something interesting for a social scientist, right? But for computer scientists, like, why would you care about that 1%? 99% worked. What do you need from this 1%? See, you have the data. For example, up to 5%. 5% disagreement. Fair enough. It's an outlier. 95%. That's interesting. Our method worked. See, 95%. Yeah, that's. I guess it also depends on what kinds of methods you work with. Has anyone ever disagreed with you in a room? Like, for example, when you're presenting a paper and someone goes, "No, that is wrong." Like in interdisciplinary, rarely kind of stuff. I guess the right question would be: have you ever had to present your computer or social science stuff to a room of computer scientists, of the opposite group of people?
I hadn't personally had the experience. I can tell you that one of the last conferences I visited, there was actually an old professor. It was all information-retrieval people. But like Johanna said, they were writing letters. It wasn't exactly letters. It was more like a publication, something between a letter and a publication, saying you should use only this way and you should never use that way. And other professors were writing exactly the opposite, that both are fine, or you should not tell people what to do just based on what you think. And it actually did happen at a conference that the student was presenting, and basically at the end, it happened more than once with this professor. And basically he waited for the end, and then he raised his hand to ask a question. And the question was something like, since you ignored everything I said, and now everything what you showed is useless, what do you want us to do with it? Something like that. I feel like I felt awkward at that moment. I feel like all the other people felt awkward in the room. So I would say that, I wouldn't say that usually we agree with what is presented. It's just there is a way to disagree, and this is not a way.
It's all review.
What he did was, I think it was completely unacceptable. And so whenever I presented to a room of interdisciplinary people, I never got a comment like that. So I'm sure that some people disagreed with what I did, and either just kept it to themselves or phrased it in a way that I wouldn't necessarily feel like, like dumb or like an idiot. So I don't know if I would refer to it as a disagreement, more like an advice, which I get a lot when I present, especially to people not from computer science.
Be careful. Hey, so I guess interdisciplinary work does not really sit well with employers sometimes. And then I guess my next question would be, what are your insights on job hunting as an interdisciplinary scholar? Because it's really hard, right? For example, I'm doing this, I've got Python skills, whatever. And then, but I also do want to work in something that's really related to politics. where do you find that job? So it's kind of, and then if you go to a political science department, you go like, I do Python. We don't care. What theories do you know? What theories do you work with? Like what research questions that you addressed? What are your results? Right. So I guess in terms of work, job hunt, what would you say? I guess Oli, maybe?
I want to continue the tradition of disagreeing with you, Bogdan. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. I think that having an interdisciplinary perspective of being able to bring something you can say about doing that sort of work is actually really valuable. It was a major question area in the last interview that I had for this role, which was a good solid 10 minutes on okay, how do you bridge the gap between different areas. I think there's a real interest in trying to, I don't want to use all the kind of corporate buzzwords, but leverage different perspectives, bring people together, and see what sort of value you can create from that. So I think there are ways that if you are that sort of researcher, for sure you can use that to your advantage in the job hunt.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I think, so as I said, I studied social sciences, then I decided to go and study computer science. At the time, that felt very alien, and I had no clue what I was doing, but that's what I was doing. And it wasn't until I had a lecturer who suddenly talked about HCI, which was not such a thing at the time, I felt that I was at a place where I could say I could belong in the future. And that was really eye-opening to me to go, hang on, it's okay if I bring different qualities. It's okay if I don't think in a binary construct. It's okay if I'm fluid in my thinking. It's okay if I am fluid, so I can bring myself here, right? And I think that was a real eye-opening moment for me as a person, but also for me as a researcher. I then went on to do a PhD in computing with very much qualitative methods, mixed methods, and my supervisors had no clue, right? But they were very open to me to exploring things, to stumbling on things, and they trusted me, which was amazing of them, and that made me who I am as well. So in the beginning, I had a real chip on my shoulder of, oh, I'm not a computer scientist and I'm doing a computer science degree. If you ask me separately, I'll still make a joke about that because I still feel a little bit that I'm an imposter in computing. But also I don't feel home in the other disciplines. So I hid that part of me. I wouldn't say that out loud. I've discovered over the years, slowly and more, that this is who I am, and that's what I bring to the table, and that's part of my superpower. I can talk to multiple people. I can take on different perspectives. I can think beyond the binary. I am comfortable doing that, and that's what I bring to the table, and I can talk to people, and that's a real skill too. So yeah, my advice is find your own path, but don't be scared and don't hide.
It's important. It's an important skill to also articulate what you do to people who don't really understand what you do, right? And then to put it in simple terms, so you can leverage both of these skills that you have. You have the understanding of both worlds, right? And then you can leverage this understanding to improve your career outcomes. Would that be correct assessment? Okay, excellent. So that brings us to the benefits. What are the main benefits of working across disciplines? And I guess that's a question for everyone, because it's a very important one.
Maybe I'll start. The main benefit I see is working interdisciplinary is the impact. You can, if you do just work with numbers, you'll get findings. But how do you find the insights and how you can communicate the impact is by doing interdisciplinary work. So you can communicate your impact well if you do interdisciplinary work. And then the other thing is, as I said, it opens doors for you. If I just did computer science work, I might not have this postdoc open for me because I have improved, because I have broadened my skill set with different methodologies by talking to different people. I could land in this job today. So it broadens your scope as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I guess I would add, just on a personal level, I think the thing that I always really relish is just the learning. Like, you're constantly, and sometimes, you're faced with, it looks like a challenge, you've got a new body of literature that you need to understand, or a new method that you're diving headfirst into. But I love, like, not being too comfortable, being able to, explore different things. So yeah, the learning for me.
I would add that, at least the way what I get. So I haven't applied for any promotions yet, but I do. So because it's something very interesting to me, I do speak to people that do a lot. Some are more successful than others specifically in that, and I find it that something that repeats itself, especially from those that were very successful with that, is whether or not you can build this whole story that is coherent, kind of, and explain to people that I am this expert in that. So it's not just doing interdisciplinary with, one time I'm doing with people from medicine, other time I'm doing with people from maybe communication science, and I have this just bunch of random publications in different journals and different venues. It's about building this story, something that people can understand and connect to, and get a better idea of who you are and what you're doing. And I do think that if you are able to kind of be coherent with that, with the interdisciplinary studies and work in collaborations, then you can build a much more interesting character. You are not this guy that only knows information retrieval and how to improve the metrics that we use on information retrieval. You have a much wider understanding of that. And I think that makes you a much more valuable, let's say, player for a team. Unless, of course, they're not interested in that, and then maybe that's not the right job for you.
Learn everything you can, people.
I think what people have said is absolutely great points. To pick up on what Oleg said, it's often this idea of your skills are transferable, and it was also something that I thought of when we were asking about publishing and different venues and what is important. And I think Hiruni has also alluded to this idea of sometimes it's really valuable to pick up a method that is not used in your area to say, hey, we can actually apply that here as well. And that's a massive contribution. When you're a student or early career researcher, you often don't see that that's actually the value. Your outcomes and your results, yeah, sure, as well. But the way that you can prove that this particular thing also works in this particular setting is sometimes where the key is. And this sets research, this is where other people can really build on. So it's that transferableness of things, being flexible in how you think. But I also want to flip it around. So we talk, obviously, the panel is about interdisciplinary and cross-disciplinary collaborations. But if you find yourself to be very interested in one particular thing, and you really want to go deep in that, do that as well, right? Like, don't worry about, oh, I do need to be interdisciplinary. Yes, it's a real trend and people want this. Simultaneously, sometimes you just need to be your nerd and you need to sit in your corner for the next 10 years and write your, I don't know how many books, because that is going to be valuable too. You know, and maybe you're just not the kind of person that likes to work with other people, which, you know.
Nothing wrong with that.
What can we do?
Makes this panel a bit less useful for you. And I guess, absolutely. So let's have some questions from our dear participants. Then, please. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I really like the discussions and related to cross-disciplinary collaborations. I attended last time the ADMS hackathon. So it's kind of like, it's very intense and short days, different backgrounds, but at the end we learned a lot on how to find the middle ground, but also not the middle ground, like the highlighted methods, the best method that we could use. And so based on that experience, so I would want to ask each of you in regard also with what Oleg said about coherence, like because when we are in a disciplinary research, a lot of people come with different backgrounds. For example, like in a group, we can have statisticians and also computer science and social science, and they have like different methods of seeing, for example, if we want to approach like a disasters topic. And so how do you finally come at which method is the best to be used for that specific topic, and how to navigate the dynamics of it, of like people with different, you know. And also like the second question is still related with the first one. Do you have to, if you are involved in a interdisciplinary research, you need to at least know a bit about other methods? Because like for me, my experience, like when I have like interdisciplinary research with statisticians, and then like we want to approach it in a quantitative way, also like there is a computer science of it, and then like when that person explained, oh, I want to use a PCA model, and then if I don't know about what PCA, so we couldn't decide whether PCA is the best way to be used for approaching that topic or not. So I would like to have your advice and insights on it.
Yes, a good friend of mine always goes, if you don't know, just clone it. why do you need to extract data from this image? Just ask Claude to do it. There are no more methods. Claude could do it better if you got money.
Well, my take on that, my personal take on that is that I'll start kind of to say that, sometimes we disagree. We just kind of agree to disagree. Sometimes people just think that the other method doesn't apply. So it happens for us as well in the research that we do. Not in our project, some people are very qualitative and they think that the right way is to talk to people and, let's say, ask them how they search. And other people like myself, I personally I disagree with that. I don't think that if you ask me, I'm not going to say maybe some people are better than me, but if you ask me how I actually search, I wouldn't be able to convey it fairly. I'll tell you how serious searcher I am, how I verify everything, but if you actually follow me, you'll see that I often just rely on what Google AI Overview says. Sometimes I do a deep search, sometimes I don't. If you ask me in an interview, I'll probably give you the better side of myself. And I think that it's kind of for a lot of people. So we kind of disagree on that. It's not like I was able to convince the other person that in the project that this is, let's say, wrong or we shouldn't do this, and they were not able to convince me. And I think it's fine to disagree. But also, how do you actually do agree? I think, at least my personal take is how persuasive you can be about it. And I'm not talking about manipulating people into agreeing with you. I'm talking about explaining. So for example, explain what is PCA, and not really, so you can explain what is PCA from the mathematical perspective with eigenvector values and stuff. That's not how you persuade somebody that doesn't know what PCA is, right? You need to explain what are the benefits of PCA, why this method is good, what is it good for, and when it is okay to use it. And then you're either successful in persuading this, in convincing the other person, or not. And that, some people are better in being more persuasive than others. So I think there's this dynamic thing of, I don't know, personality or that some people are really good at it and others don't. But also we always need to come open to it and be able to explain why we think this is the way to go. And also I gotta say that I find it one of the benefits in this interdisciplinary work is being challenged all the time. And it makes me think, why do I want to use it? Is it just because somebody else used it, or is there really a good reason to use it? And sometimes the answer is just because somebody else used it. And then I hope that I'm mature enough to change my mind.
I really agree with that. That's a good answer. I would add maybe one bit to your first question. I guess I wouldn't consider it necessarily a best, but maybe what's most appropriate. And I think part of that comes back to your question. But then the thing that I experienced a lot over the last couple of years was also the practical layer containing around your question, the project itself. So we would often have end of financial year rush where we'd look at the money that we had not yet spent and we go, fuck, we got to spend it or else they're going to take it away. And so then all of a sudden the method that you're using is the method that will best spend whatever that amount of money is, So there's, the question from the kind of pure research perspective, but then there's also various kind of practical layers that I think you could put over it.
Yeah, absolutely. The resources aspect as well. Like, you may have people with a particular skill that are sitting idle you really want to use, and it kind of is okay to use that as for answering your research question. I think, and that's what Oleg has already said, and Oli as well, is like, okay, what's your research question, right? What is the best method to find out what you're trying to find out? But then I also heard in your question a little bit of, okay, how do you deal with the people around the table? And that's a different question. And we all bring egos to the table. And that is sometimes hard to manage. And sometimes people, sometimes you don't know people. Sometimes you have a really good relationship and that you can push back on something, or that you need to make that step back. So it's what Oleg already said. It's your responsibility to learn, but it's also your responsibility to question about the other person. Like, where do you come from? What is your point of view on why the PCA is the best way to go? So dealing with these egos is hard, is challenging, but it's all about the research. And I often work with people that I know I like. Because I know that I can disagree with them, and I also know I can ask dumb questions and say, didn't get that. I have no clue what this is. Can you explain it to me? And they'll go, yeah, sure, not a problem. Because it's not about, I'm not judging you. I'm helping us to move forward, and that's more important. So I think, finding people that you work well with is a joy, and sometimes it takes a while, to build up their portfolio.
Following on from this discussion, would it be fair to say that actually this cross-disciplinary stuff it's not really about discipline sometimes? I guess most of the time it's more about being a good person, is it? It's more about being agreeable or disagreeable, but agreeable, disagreeable to an extent, right? So
Being open-minded.
would it be fair to say that being a very approachable person or being a good person is more important than paying attention to what your actual discipline is? Because if you are able to find common ground, you can find common ground with different kinds of people, regardless of whether they are, computer scientists or not, or social scientists or not. That'd be a fair.
That's my approach.
Beautiful. Hello.
Thanks very much, and I'll disagree with Bogdan.
Disagree with Bogdan then.
I think my takeaway from this conversation is that at the heart of whatever we all are doing is our ability to effectively communicate with a diverse set of audience with diverse expertise. And if you're able to tell jokes along the way, that's cherry on the top. Welcome your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree with that. And I think linked to that is a question for Ollie, because you've also worked with the government. I also previously worked for the government, and I understand that folks in the government speak a totally different language, and they are sometimes traumatized by the sort of language you speak in academia. So how did you manage to convince them to give you a job, and you stayed there for a few years? So yeah, keen to hear your thoughts.
How did I convince them to hire me? Yeah, I asked myself that question a few times. I think part of it is the just the sheer luck of the process that can happen sometimes. You never know what a hiring committee, well, sometimes you do, but often you don't know what a hiring committee is exactly looking for. And I think the thing that I lucked into was the person who was director of this particular team. She was a very, very experienced public servant. So yes, she had experienced her trauma over several decades of her career, but most of her career had been in defence and in infrastructure. And so on paper, I was saying, I don't have a public service background, but I understand communications. That's where I've done my kind of academic specialization. So in that instance, I think for her, she was willing to take a chance on someone without a public service background because she had so much expertise in that she wasn't worried. She wanted some additional kind of power on the comms side of things. And I think it's a point to never preemptively rule yourself out of anything, because I absolutely could have looked at that job and said, no, like this takes experienced public servants a long time to get to here. I couldn't possibly do that.
Do we have time? Like I don't. Yeah. So a very, very good friend of mine works in policy. Is quite high up in the Victorian government, and we see each other because we climb together. So we go climbing every week several times, and we've been doing that for the last 10 years. So we know each other very, very well, and we've known each other through lots of different growths and changes and so on. Now, she was seconded a few months ago, just when all the bushfires started to happen. She was seconded to, you go and look after the airplanes, roads, and fire brigade. She's like, okay, sure. Well, why not? I've got nothing else to do, right? And basically she came to me and said, okay, I have this data people team. I've worked with data people before, not a problem. But can you talk to me for a moment? Can you explain a few things to me? So what I'm trying to say is sometimes it's the other way around. And yes, we can try to talk to our government people in a way that they understand. But sometimes our government friends also need to talk to us in a way we understand. Because when I hear a talk in a professional manner, I go, I've got no clue what you just said. Right? But when she talks to me in the normal way, I'm like, oh yeah, I get this. Right. So it's adapting where you want to go, where you're from, and it's a skill that you learn too. So, I'm pretty bad at explaining myself and using particular words in particular times. I've been told you need to talk more academically. I've tried, doesn't work with me. So you do get me as you get me. Sorry.
Maybe one more thought. Sorry. The point on kind of policy people could be better at talking to real people. I very much agree with that. Very much agree with that. I think one of the things that can help if you continue to be an academic that is trying to engage with that audience is a better understanding of where in the cycle they happen to be. Because one of the things you find when you're on the inside is that years of work kind of gone into a tiny little thing that has finally become public. And if you come in as an academic at that moment and you misread the fact that actually these people have been working on it for a long time, they just haven't been able to say anything. I think you run the risk of essentially just being at odds with how you're having that conversation. And I saw that a lot. Academics who maybe didn't quite grasp that the public servants were lying to them, but they sort of had to say, oh, we're still thinking about it. And that means, oh, for 5 years we have done deep thought, but there has been no decision of government, so we're not able to pursue it. And rather than treating them like an undergraduate student who has just come to that subject, treat them as an expert in the field, and maybe be a little kind to them as well. The fact that they are doing their best within the confines that operate around them. It's
great.
Oh, thank you all. I'm really glad we talk about disagreement, because I feel like as a society we now use so many social media platforms. We comment on so many things, but we seem to don't really know how to disagree with each other anymore. And I'm glad you mentioned that you don't know how to talk academically, because I don't. And I'm kind of struggling with that at the moment. I guess my question for each of you here, not even include you as well, is like, is there's one thing you think that we should do to disagree better? That's the one part of it. The second part is like, what is one thing we should do to be open to disagreement better? How we can open up ourselves so that the other people know where we are come from? Because I don't know how to manage ego. It's just hard. Nobody teach me that during my PhD, and I'm just like, I'm suffering right now. So, but thank you all. I'm really enjoy it.
I guess I would also probably start it by saying that I think it's part of human nature to align ourselves with people who have the same beliefs. We are tribal in our nature. We all want to be with the people of our who think in the same way. We don't want any animosity. We don't want to confront anyone. We always seek something. We seek approval, and we're always looking for someone who would support us. We don't want someone who constantly says no. It makes us feel bad, and it hurts our egos. And that's why we build these bubbles for ourselves. Even on social media, we create bubbles, and then with social media, it's even easier. You don't need to go outside and meet people. You can just create your own bubble with thousands or hundreds of thousands of people who would agree with everything you say, and it's going to feed your ego, and it's going to make you feel better. And then as academics, we do it as well. And then I think it's also particularly true for academics, because many of us believe that we've gone to school, we've got our degrees, it makes us experts. And then sometimes you go to other fields and then we say, all right, I've got a PhD. I'm not an expert in this field, but I've got a PhD, and then here's my thought. And then it's also, I think, doing a PhD, you can disagree with me, people, but doing a PhD also overinflates your ego. And I think that's something that's accompanied, the entire human history. That's accompanied us for a long time. And then we still haven't found a solution for that. And just, I guess, as academics, I guess that would make us a lot better if we, as academics, could find a way. And then I guess peer review is a way to do it, right? And then also working with people from different disciplines is another way. But also managing your own persona, I guess that would be the most challenging part.
I would say that I had, during my PhD, I think that kind of maybe, I hope, helped me kind of learn an important lesson. So it was not interdisciplinary at all, but I would disagree a lot with my supervisor. And then we would spend just entire meetings just arguing about whether or not I should use this statistical test or not. And I gotta say, it had a toll on my PhD. I feel like I missed at least a few more publications because every project would take so much longer just because of this ego, like you mentioned, because I would come up with a method and I would use it, and then he would say, no, use a different method. And because I already did all the reading and I didn't just come up with it because of out of nowhere, I would say, no, this method is the best for this one, for this analysis. And we would just go into this long argument, not making any progress. And unfortunately, I didn't learn it during my PhD. I only kind of realized it towards the end of it. But I think that the most important thing is to be, like you say, open-minded and aware that just disagreeing doesn't lead you anywhere. So you need to be strategic about when you disagree. And I guess kind of always trying to think what is the benefit and why should I agree or disagree? What is actually how it's going to affect the outcome?
Also, I guess when you disagree, there are also career implications. So when you talk about here, for example, your supervisor, some supervisors are very open to this. I told my supervisor, okay, I don't want to do any of your cool stuff. Give me that, some of the coding things, and then Python. I want to learn Python. He goes, all right. So I made a compelling case, and then he found the third supervisor who was an expert in this. Yeah, so it's an example of a very approachable person, but some people push against this. They would say, you're a candidate, you're a student here. Listen to me, you don't want to do this because you've got no idea what that is. Yeah. Anyone else? Maybe this question.
I'm happy to jump in here. I think, of course, our world is interesting right now. So agreeing and disagreeing is an interesting thing, or withholding your voice is an interesting point of view as well. For me, what is important is to bring curiosity to the table, to bring empathy to the table, to be humble, and humor. Humor, yeah. I think if you can laugh and you can bring back our humanity and bring back shared points to ensure that we're disagreeing about the subject, we're not disagreeing about who you are, I think makes it so important to be able to work together. And that's why I guess I said previously as well, work with people who you also like to work with. Obviously, yes, sometimes for particular questions, research questions, is good to work with people with a particular skill who you might not know as well, and you might not have the same connection with as the other people that you've been working with. I guess, and it's what Oleg was saying here too about supervisors or people who have a little bit more say about you at a particular point in time. I've seen more recently one particular supervisor who has been very pedantic and wants the best out of the best from anyone, which crushes people. And I think I've been talking in the last few weeks with these people, with these students, because they don't know where to go. They're stuck. And that just, one does reflect on that on themselves as, okay, do I crush people in a corner, or do I give them the freedom when they need the freedom? Do I give them guidance at that point in time? And sometimes it is about, looking for other people that can support you at that point in time. Come to my workshop this afternoon. We talk a little bit about that.
Connecting sessions, connecting.
It's a good segment.
But yeah, it's hard. Yep.
Just remain civil. Please be civil and respect others. I think there should be a class on this. It should have been part of our program, actually.
I think somehow it happened to be. I think we have to probably wrap up, unless any last points from Hiruni or Oli on that.
Yeah, I'd say just as Oleg said, be open-minded and try to accept what they are saying. If they can, if they can if you get the point correctly, if only just you can agree with that. Otherwise, you have to think about that. Yeah. And then come to a middle point where you and the others agree.
That's the best probably thing. Oh, okay. Sorry.
To say that kindness is a very underrated quality, I think. Being kind to yourself as well, giving people the benefit of the doubt where possible, that you don't know what someone else is experiencing. But also, if you don't like someone, or you don't enjoy something, then never feel bad about telling someone else who is responsible for that, person or system or process, and expecting that they'll do something about it. They might not, but you should always feel that that's your right to do that too.
It's also the best thing to say. You can disagree, but it's been wonderful. Thank you so much. And then